dismembered, decapitated. It's probably because you're trying to hide something and make sure certain details don't come out.
10 to Life with Elise.
Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Elise and this is 10 to Life. Here we talk about everything true crime. We talk about the good, the bad, the past, the current. We talk about it all, and we really just try to generate awareness and hopefully bring a little bit of justice to the victims in the process. So if you're brand new, stopping by for the first time, welcome. I am happy you are here. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and subscribe by hitting that subscribe button below. And for those of you who are existing subscribers and 10 to Lifers, you already know it. You know what we do here. You know, I don't need to explain it to you. You got it. You're dialed in. So we're going to talk about a case today that is very similar to the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. And I know I don't even have to break that case down for any of you watching because everybody in the world, I feel, already knows about this case. But this case today has very similar circumstances to the Gabby and Brian case. And one of the biggest outrages during the Gabby Petito case was the recognition that it was receiving. And so many people were not only upset and angered, but questioning why that case particularly got such media attention and why it became a household name. Not to say that it wasn't warranted and that it, of course, wasn't important that was spread everywhere, but there was a level of frustration that other missing persons cases weren't getting that same attention. And this case is a perfect example of that because not only are there similar circumstances, but here we now have another 20-year-old girl who has seemingly vanished and has not been heard from in nearly 3 weeks now while dating somebody who has a history of DV, and that person, while all of these attempts are being made to make contact and ask questions, are completely going unanswered. Sounds familiar, right? He's logging into social media, as we know Brian Laundrie did, but he's refusing to answer any questions, and that is a huge red flag. In addition to the similar circumstances, this case itself is just extremely alarming because she has now been missing for 3 weeks. Lateche Norris is a 20-year-old girl from Indiana. She is absolutely stunning, as you can see from these photos, and reportedly she has a very close relationship with her mother, Cheryl. She also is reportedly an aspiring tattoo artist and has no history of drug use. Now, it's important that I say that now, and you're going to see why in a little bit here. Lateche met 25-year-old Joey Smith through a mutual friend in Indiana. At the time, Joey was visiting from California, but they immediately hit it off over their shared interest in tattooing and soon began dating. Unbeknownst to Lateche, Joey was secretly battling a long-term addiction problem with heroin. Lateche ended up traveling to California to be with Joey because, as I mentioned, they immediately hit it off and they were dating. And in the end of July, they had moved into an apartment in a complex right outside of Santa Cruz, California. Now, at this point, it was reported that Joey had been clean for at least a couple of months. He was working in construction. This manager or boss that he had in this construction job was actually the one paying the rent at this apartment for the young couple, and everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction. However, it wasn't long before neighbors began complaining, and they were complaining that the couple was in a very volatile relationship, often arguing and fighting inside that apartment. One of the first confrontations and altercations that is actually public and on record occurred on September 1st. The couple got into an altercation while inside a Safeway grocery store. Now, while we don't know the details of this altercation, we do know that Lateche was the one who was arrested on DV charges, not Joey Smith. Around this time in September, it's reported that Joey started using again because remember, it was earlier said that he had been clean for a few months. So it's now early September and he's using again, and so much so that he unfortunately overdoses. A neighbor inside that apartment complex goes over and gives him Narcan, which for those of you who don't know, and I don't know even all of the details of this, so I'll probably say it wrong, but Narcan is often given when there is an overdose and it helps, reverse the effects, and I don't know what the chemical is that it produces. But anyways, it's something that is supposed to combat the severity of the effects of what's happening in the overdose to ultimately save this person's life. And luckily, it did save Joey's life. After this, Lateche decided to go back to Indiana, and Joey wanted to follow, so he quit that construction job and he went with her to Indiana. While in Indiana, just a few weeks later after all of this happened, the couple was arrested again on DV charges. And it's believed that these altercations stemmed from Joey's addiction and his continued drug use, because friends say that Lateche would sometimes become combative when she discovered that Joey had been using again, as again, she was not a drug user herself. So she would see her boyfriend, who she loved, who she cared about, revert back to using, relapse, and she would reportedly get very upset, and that's when the altercation would happen. Following that arrest in mid-October, Joey flew back to California to enroll in rehab. He promised Lateche that he was going to get clean, get sober, and get healthy, and that they were going to get this relationship on track. So while things look promising again here, and Joey's going to be entering a rehab facility, hopefully get clean, their relationship can be repaired, this is where things really start to spiral downhill. Because on November 1st, just a couple of weeks later after Joey had left to go and enroll in this rehab facility, November 1st rolls around and Lateche flies out from Indiana to San Diego, California to be with Joey because he left the treatment facility and was reportedly living on the streets. So she now flies to San Diego to save him, be with him, make sure he's okay because he left the rehab facility and is living on the streets. And San Diego is very far away from Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is approximately 500 miles away from San Diego. It's up north near San Francisco and about a 7-hour drive from San Diego. So they were both now in a place where they had no connections, where they had no friends, and were essentially living on the streets. The very next day, on November 2nd, Lateche messaged a friend of hers on Facebook, and she says, "I don't have my cell phone anymore. I broke it." Now, when I first saw this, I wondered, first of all, is that true? Did she truly break it? Perhaps, if they got into another altercation or if she was frustrated, maybe she threw her phone, maybe she broke the screen, who knows? But I started wondering too, because of the circumstances and because Joey had quit his construction job. They were reportedly living on the streets. They didn't know anybody down there. If Joey may have forced Lateche to sell her cell phone, trade it for drugs, something to gain money to help fuel his addiction. Because remember, he's not working. They're homeless. He wouldn't have any money to purchase any drugs on it himself. So could that be what happened to her cell phone? Possibly. Now, before we move on to where this all goes downhill, I want to speak a little bit more about Joey Smith's background, because in addition to the addiction, Joey has a very dark history and comes from a very dark world. Joey has criminal convictions of arson, vandalism, and possession. And in 2016, Joey was accused of vandalizing 16 cars with a baseball bat and setting 3 fires in the Santa Cruz neighborhood. He was ultimately sentenced to a year in jail, and I believe he had to pay approximately $37,000 in restitution. He was also ordered to complete a substance abuse program at the time. So here we have a really tumultuous relationship and situation, because you have this young couple who met, one of them secretly at the time battling a severe heroin addiction, has a long history of vandalism, arson, all these different things which he has been convicted of, and this young woman who seemingly wants to save him, who loves him, who is optimistic of their future and is trying to, make sure that he is okay. In addition to that, you have the DV charges for both of them peppered into that. No money, no job, no place to live. It's just all of the different components for a bad situation and ultimately a disaster to happen. So now Lateche is in San Diego with Joey. We don't know where they're living. We don't know what they're doing. There's no way of contacting them because he doesn't have a phone. She broke her phone reportedly. And what's going on? Well, a couple of days later, after sending that Facebook message to her friend saying that she broke her phone, she reaches out to her mom. And at 4:49 a.m. on November 5th, she calls her mom from a stranger's cell phone and reportedly was extremely frantic. She told her mom that the night before, she had gotten into a very heated argument with her boyfriend for hours. And while she was explaining this argument, she also said that she was trying to reach Joey. And so she was asking her mom for Joey's cell phone number because he didn't have a cell phone of his own. He would often call from strangers' cell phones. So she was asking her mom, hey, can you give me the number from the last phone number he called you at yesterday? I'm trying to find him. I'm trying to get in touch with him. At the end of the call, Lateche's mother said, you call me back. I love you. And she responded and said, I will, Mom. I promise. I love you more. But Lateche never called her mom back. And since then, nobody has heard from or seen Lateche or Joey. However, Joey has logged into social media from other people's phones, but he won't respond to any messages or answer any questions. It feels a lot like Brian Laundrie, doesn't it? Now, the initial thought would be to track the phones, right? But let me explain why that's not so easy in this situation. So, as I mentioned, the phone Lateche had, she says she no longer hasn't broke, but even if she still had it, it's reported that it is similar to a burner device in the sense that it only works off of Wi-Fi. It doesn't work through having data on the phone. So tracing the steps that way and where it pings along the way wouldn't necessarily work because it would only show where it was used when under Wi-Fi. But she doesn't even have that phone. And as for Joey, he uses strangers' phones. He doesn't have a phone of his own. So to track that history also doesn't make sense. I suppose you could go to the level of tracking the phone and the IP address of when he last logged into Facebook or one of these apps, then figure out where that IP address comes from, who that phone belongs to, and then reach out to that person to ask, when did you last see Joey? When did he use your phone? Where were you? What was the location? Was he with anybody? And I don't know if maybe that's something the police are perhaps working on, but I would imagine that that's probably one of the quickest and easiest ways, depending on how easy it is to trace that activity without having a warrant and such, because it's technically somebody else's device. I would think that that would be the only way to actually try to retrace footsteps. So when Lateche called her mom, this was November 5th, remember, and she was saying that they had gotten into a heated argument the night before and that she was going to call her back, and she never did. And nobody has heard from her or Joey again. However, on November 13th, just a week later, Joey posts on Facebook, and he posts on his Facebook story an image of a black VW Bug in Chula Vista, California. And Chula Vista is right outside of San Diego, and I believe it's actually probably rolled into San Diego County. Chula Vista is also actually where the Maya Malete case was going on and still is going on. However, since then, he hasn't posted a thing, but it is reported that people have seen activity that he has logged into these apps from other people's phones, but again, not answering messages and not answering questions. And this was something, again, we saw Brian Laundrie do, whether it was Spotify, I think it was Instagram too. He was refusing to talk to anybody, but hello, your social media activity is still traceable, and so is your login, so people are going to see that.
My daughter would never go this long without contacting us. She would never not call back, especially given the conversation we had on the 5th.
Smith, the boyfriend, also stopped responding to the mother's messages.
Do I think they're just out gallivanting around together? Absolutely not.
You can hear the worry in her voice, and Cheryl has been adamant out there that she knows that something is wrong here, that her daughter wouldn't just go missing or not call her, and that there must be something at play. A mother's intuition and a mother's gut instinct is strong, and Cheryl is adamant that something must have happened to her daughter and that she wouldn't willingly go or not call her back and just go undetected for this many weeks, especially when we're right around the holiday season.
Do you have any reason to believe that Joey may have hurt your daughter? I know they had some domestic issues in the past. I know this isn't easy to talk about, but I mean, was he abusive to your daughter in the past?
They both definitely, there's a domestic element there. I wasn't there for any of these, so I can't say, for certain what was going on. But from what I've gathered and everything that she's told me, she didn't realize that he was an addict at first until they got all the way out to California the first time. And then when she did, that was upsetting. But there was also an element of, it seems like when he wasn't using, I don't know if maybe he was going through withdrawals or what it was, but he would get very irritated and agitated and wouldn't let her out of his sight. So this caused arguments, and I don't know.
That right there is a very big red flag if he became possessive and wouldn't allow her out of his sight. And it does make sense because we know when she went back to Indiana and after that altercation in the summer that he immediately quit his job and flew back there too and wanted to be with her. So it does seem as though there maybe is an element of possession, and that makes this, again, just a little bit more alarming and disturbing.
Know what transpired to lead to that, but I can tell you that my daughter is not the type that's going to let any man put his hands on her, grab at her, pull at her. She's going to defend herself.
Now that statement, again, and every mother is going to defend their child, of course, 100%. But that statement also made me wonder, when Lateche was arrested for these DV charges, both times, was it because she was truly defending and protecting herself rather than being the instigator? Because remember, in that first Safeway altercation, she was the only one arrested. But I can't help but wonder, rather than her being the instigator, was it a form of her actually defending herself? And before you guys kind of go off on a tangent about no, then he would be too, look at that body cam footage again. Back to the Gabby Petito case. They were questioning her, and she was saying that she was the aggressor and taking the rap for him. And maybe that's the same circumstances here. When you love somebody and you're trying to protect them and you're scared of the wrath of if something does happen to them as far as being arrested, you take the blame for them, oftentimes in these types of relationships. So I don't think it's a far stretch to wonder if A, she was either defending herself, or B, if like Gabby, she was trying to deflect and take the rap for something that truly wasn't her fault. And I'm just saying that in regards to the Safeway incident and everything as a whole, knowing his past versus hers. But let me know what you guys think in the comments.
What does your heart tell you right now? I mean, I've done a lot of missing persons cases, and a lot of times a mom's heart will lead people in the right direction. I mean, obviously there's a reason you're in California up all day long and night, literally banging on doors. What's your heart telling you right now?
That she needs help. She's not out here living her wild and free 20-year-old life, or decided to be sovereign and transient. She needs help. She is in danger. And I don't for certain, if it wasn't Joey, if he didn't hurt her or was the cause of her being hurt or unable to contact me, then someone else was. And they had to have done something to him as well, or he wouldn't be ignoring everyone and dodging everyone. I can't ignore the fact.
Joey's basically missing right. Yeah, Joey's basically missing right now too, right, Cheryl?
Yes, in a sense. I mean, he's logged on to his social media. He's updated his Facebook story on November 13th. So,
Now, I really quickly, too, want to talk about what she had just said, that even if it wasn't Joey himself who did something to her, that he is still the cause and the root of what may have happened. And I'm going to quickly play for you an interview that one of the neighbors who used to live next to the couple did with a news source. And she was able to witness a lot of the behavior and the relationship firsthand. She even had them over to dinner at one point at her house. And so listen to what she says about this too.
Seen since.
They were super dysfunctional. Do I think Joey killed Lateche? No. But do I think it's his fault that she might be dead? Yes. Because of his dark world and the dark places that she ended up because of her relationship with him, trying to get him out. I think they ended up in a very dangerous situation. You know, they were in San Diego, out of their area. They had no connections. I think that his drug addiction got him talking with people that were very shady. I think that they're in trouble. I think that they've been victimized by someone or something, and they need help.
So with hearing all of those interviews, with knowing Joey's history versus Lateche's history, for me at least, what I gather is that, again, she was desperately trying to help and save this guy who she was, in love with and was cared so deeply about, because even the neighbor who knew them well is saying he came from a dark world. I believe that he is responsible for whoever they are with or encountered along the way. It's because of him. Because think about it, if it weren't for him, they certainly wouldn't be living on the streets. They wouldn't be necessarily dealing with any sort of financial issues because he would still be working. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go into this. On November 9th, Lateche's mother filed a missing persons report with the San Diego Police Department. She also left with a one-way ticket from Indiana to San Diego to search for her daughter. And since then, she has remained in San Diego and has not gone back to Indiana. She is posting flyers everywhere. She's canvassing neighborhoods, tent cities, shelters, everywhere that you could possibly imagine that she could either locate her daughter or Joey, because we do know that he is homeless and living on the streets, and that may lead to something. She's looking everywhere possible and not giving up hope. Now, here's the problem, and in my opinion, a big reason that this case hasn't been getting the social media attention that it needs, especially given how similar it is to the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. Many people out there assume that Lateche chose to live this new lifestyle, to live in the transient world, live life like Joey, and many people hear that Joey's an addict, and so they automatically assume that she is as well, although she is not, and she doesn't have a history of drug use. So when people hear that, they automatically think, oh, it's, a couple of drug addicts, they're in love, they're choosing to live this transient lifestyle together, and it's nothing to really be taken seriously. And in the beginning, even the police were a little bit like that, and they weren't doing much until just, I think it was 2 days ago, they finally changed her missing person case to an at-risk case. And the San Diego Police Department did issue a statement through a press release, and I'm going to read it here for you. It says, missing woman Lateche Norris declared at risk. Investigators call on Public Help San Diego. San Diego Police Department investigators are now calling 20-year-old Lateche Norris an at-risk missing person after 3 weeks of extensive investigative work in trying to find her. The change in status to at risk was based on the totality of the circumstances, including the length of time. Norris has been missing and the absence of anyone reporting verifiable contact with her. Norris had last communication with her mother on November 5th, and she was reported missing to San Diego Police Department on November 9th. While there is no evidence to suggest she is the victim of a crime at this time, the Missing Persons Unit has followed up on every available tip and lead to date. Police continue to use all resources at their disposal to find Miss Norris. We need anyone with information, sightings, tips, or leads to come forward. Tips can be called into the Missing Persons Unit at 619-531-2277. You can remain anonymous by calling Crime Stoppers at 888-580-8477. Now, while I get the police are handcuffed, so to speak, with this, because they can't necessarily send out, any sort of Amber Alert, or they can't send out a warrant for him or anything like that, because technically there is no crime that has taken place yet. It is still just a missing persons investigation. But remember, again, and I hate to keep bringing it back to that, it is the same circumstances as what happened with Gabby. Brian flew back home to the storage unit, then flew back, then she was missing. He stopped answering questions. She was missing for weeks and weeks and weeks until finally her remains were discovered. I mean, what does it take for us to realize that situations like this are serious? And a mother, again, knows her daughter. If this is out of the norm, we need to err on the side of caution and believe that this is out of the norm and search for this girl. And truthfully, to me, if he's refusing to answer questions and he is refusing to contact anybody back despite logging into his accounts, that right there, the writing is on the wall. For me, at least. It's a red flag. It shows guilt, just like Brian Laundrie. When he lawyered up, when his family lawyered up, when he wasn't answering questions, why? Why aren't you answering questions unless you are guilty of something? As I said, it's now been over 3 weeks, and Christmas is coming up, Thanksgiving has already passed, and this family is looking for their young daughter. So please help. Spread the word, share this video, go to the Facebook page, do whatever you can possibly do to help generate awareness. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Lateche returns home safely and can be reunited with her family for the holidays. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's case with me, guys. I'm going to keep you updated as we learn more in this case and as new leads are updated and information is released. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button below so that you get notified in real time when those updates occur. And as always, please comment below with your thoughts, guys. You know I love hearing from you, and I'm curious to know, do you believe that there is foul play here? And do you believe that some of the people who are suggesting that she went off the grid willingly are correct? What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments below. And again, share this video where you can. Also, please give it a thumbs up on your way out, because that also helps the algorithm and will help get this spread out there in a wider way so more people see this and hopefully more tips get called in. Thanks for tuning in with me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the coverage, and I will keep you updated. Until the next case, stay safe. Bye.